Welcome to Script Doctors, where we fix what Hollywood won't. Today's episode, Ghostbusters 2016, starring Kristen Wiig, Melissa McCarthy, Leslie Jones, and Kate McKinnon. There's a lot of controversy about this movie, so I'll just say it. Most of the controversy comes from what Sony was planning to do with this movie and the subsequent sequels. Some of it is coming from misogynistic men, and let's just get that out of the way. That is not going to affect this review. I don't care if Ghostbusters are female or male. I just want a good movie. So let's talk about it. This movie really should be starring Kate McKinnon and Leslie Jones. Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy are decent in the movie, but their parts are really played out. The best parts of the movie come from Kate McKinnon, Leslie Jones, and Chris Hemsworth in his amazing comedy as the receptionist. I would say this movie is very entertaining. If you're just going in to watch, a fun comedy movie, it is mostly appropriate for all ages. There are a couple things that are not quite appropriate, but I think most kids have seen certain hand gestures or whatever, and they won't be that offended. You can contextualize it for the kids. But for the most part, I think this is a decent movie. It's not as good as the original. It's not going to be as good as the original because of the magic that happened on that. And so I'll start the spoiler section here, but I would suggest seeing this movie at some point. You don't have to go to the theater. If you want to go to the theater, it's a fun movie. Don't get me wrong, it's a fun movie. It could be better, and that's where we'll start the spoilers. The biggest parts that I felt were a letdown were the trailers basically spoiled the ending. That Chris Hemsworth gets possessed by one of the ghosts, or by the main ghost, because the other thing that was spoiled was Kristen Wiig says someone is trying to unleash ghosts on New York. She says that in the first or second trailer, and that's exactly what's happening. There is a specific person trying to unleash ghosts on New York, and they are trying to bring upon the fourth cataclysm, and I think that was a letdown that the audience knew all of this before the characters knew it, and we didn't get to discover it with them. The other big issue that I have with this movie is it would have been a lot better if it had tied in with the originals, and the only reason that I say that is not to slight these women and what they're doing. It's we as a society and as a culture, we know Ghostbusters, and this could have been a very good passing of the torch, similar to what Star Wars Force Awakens did. And in this case, this is where the script doctors come in and we fix the movie. So first of all, we're talking about the antagonist of the movies. The beginning of the movie actually starts out, they show a tour guide who is showing the haunted mansion of the movie, which is only seen in the very beginning. It's one of the ghosts that's unleashed, and the tour guide was actually setting up pranks to make people scared that there was a ghost there. Turns out there was a ghost there. I think that character, as well as the bellhop, who turned out to be the person unleashing everything, I think it would have been more interesting if you posed both of them, if not a third, to be possible people who know more about this than they're letting on, and then we get to discover that with the characters. The other thing that would be good to discover with the characters is the Ghostbusters. My pitch for the movie actually doesn't start off with any of that. It doesn't start off with Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy and their issues that they have between each other. To start off the movie, I actually would start with Leslie Jones' scene in the subway. My version of the movie, this is a sequel to the Ghostbusters 1 and Ghostbusters 2. In this world, this is 30 years after the events of Ghostbusters 2. Or we can even scrap Ghostbusters 2 if you want. That's negotiable. But ghosts have not been as prevalent since then. The Ghostbusters have been out of work for 25 plus years. They all have new jobs now. There isn't a job for them to do. There aren't ghosts for them to bust. So what happens? They all go about their own jobs. Leslie Jones' character actually is Ernie Hudson's daughter, like she is in the movie. What happens is that she's the first person to see one of the ghosts, and she remembers her what her uncle did and everything. She was a young kid at the time, or we can just say that she heard stories about it. Doesn't matter. She talks to him, and then he gives her, it's kind of a launching point for her to learn about the Ghostbusters, to learn about ghosts. Then we find Dan Aykroyd's character actually has a new apprentice, and that would be the Melissa McCarthy character. Kristen Wiig, we keep the same dynamic where they used to work together. Kristen Wiig's now a famed professor in physics. But in this, we have Dan Aykroyd character as a mentor to them. He's only there for a brief amount of time, because this is a passing of the torch. We'll see him a little bit in the first act. We'll see him a little bit in the third act. The third act is actually where we bring in Bill Murray, Ernie Hudson. We actually bring in Ernie, and Ernie Hudson can say something about like, "Hey, guess who I drug up?" or "Guess who I found?" And then they help them with the old equipment, because the old equipment hasn't been shown before. Ernie Hudson just basically says, "Hey, we dealt with this before," and kind of puts her in the right path. The reason this is important is because we will learn about Ghostbusters. This new generation of kids will learn about Ghostbusters through Leslie Jones. We're keeping Kate McKinnon's character exactly the same. We're keeping Leslie Jones' character exactly the same. We are going to change Kristen Wiig's character just slightly, because she is not going to fawn over Chris Hemsworth. There's a beautiful part in the movie where Melissa McCarthy's character actually gives a really good reaction to Kristen Wiig. Kristen Wiig is just gushing over Chris Hemsworth, and Melissa McCarthy, Kristen Wiig says, "Isn't he's so attractive?" And Melissa McCarthy just looks at her like, "What, are you serious?" That's what we're going to extrapolate on. Melissa McCarthy is going to be the joke of the movie, of their dynamic between the three of them, is that Kristen Wiig and Leslie Jones and everybody, they don't gush over Chris Hemsworth, but they get, okay, he's a beefcake. Melissa McCarthy's character won't see him as attractive. She sees him as just this, as the bumbling fool that he is. But not only that, she thinks that he looks disgusting. We'll have a part where he actually spills some water on himself because he's an idiot. He spills some water on himself and he takes off his shirt and you see his abs and everything. And Melissa McCarthy says something about "Oh, that's disgusting. Will you put some clothes on?" And all the other girls look at her like she's crazy because he's obviously attractive. So we're going to change that. The other part that I mentioned before was the bellhop and the tour guide. We're going to put them as possible suspects, which the audience is slowly realizing, okay, something's not quite up with them. They suspect that it's the tour guide, but it's actually the bellhop. We, again, unravel that mystery through the Ghostbusters without having to be told who the enemy is, that he's quirky. That was just really overdone in this, and I think it would have been better to have them have really funny scenes and have that as part of the mystery. You see little bits of him here and there, but not as much as they played in there. The other part that I really want to change is the very end of the movie. Chris Hemsworth character, and we can even keep the Chris Hemsworth character being possessed, but if we do, it's not going to be by the superpowered bellhop stuff, because that was just dumb. It's going to be some main demon that the bellhop was trying to bring forth. But Chris Hemsworth's character, if you stayed for the credits, you saw a cool dance sequence. The problem is that they showed him making them make certain movements before that. It would have been better to cut that scene out and have the Ghostbusters walk in just like they did and acknowledge, hey, all these people are posing, and have the same exact lines. Leslie Jones is like, "Hey, why are you people acting this way?" Have that exact same bit in there, because then the audience that'll stick in your mind and you'll wonder, okay, why were they all standing that way? The credits roll and you see the big dance number, and it's hilarious. Also, we're cutting out the after credits scene. If Zool is done. It needs to be done differently. I know it's part of the mythos, but in this version, Zool's already been taken care of. So cut that out because we've already had enough ties to the original. Maybe it was Zool's master or something like that we can tie it up and have Dan Aykroyd come in and talk about that as well. That's what I would have changed. I think it would have been better. Overall story, it also would have tied into the original Ghostbusters, and it would have brought this new generation into the original as well as this, and not be as confusing to the young kids. So let me know what you thought of Ghostbusters, and we'll talk to you soon. You're gonna be